Hi, everyone. My name is Vincenzo Berghella. Welcome again to another session on the extraordinary within you. We have an extraordinary guest today. I'm so happy and lucky to have you. But I'm going to pass it along to the wind behind this sail here, Kavita Narang, to introduce our special guest.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vince. And as always, to all our audience, welcome back. Today, I have, like Vince said, a super extraordinaire with us. And we are so grateful for your time, Dr. Mary Dalton. We're just being gracious here with your time. It's such a privilege and an honor to have this hour with you. For our audience, Dr. Dalton is the professor and current chair of the Department of OBGYN at Columbia University Irving Medical Center in New York. She also serves as the Director of Services at the Sloan Hospital for Women at New York Presbyterian. Her work to advance education, research, clinical practice, and policy development in women's health has won national recognition, and she's played a pivotal role in the effort to reduce maternal morbidity and mortality in New York and nationally. She has served as the president of the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine and has held several key positions and was also the past president for SMFM. So if you're tuning in today, I hope you all are really ready to be inspired just as much as I am. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass this on to Dr. Dalton to say a few words. And as always, we start with sharing a little bit of gratitude, and then we'll jump right in.
Well, first of all, let me share with you that I'm very grateful to be here with you today. Vince has been somebody that I've known and admired for so long. And Kavita, quite honestly, I remember 3 years myself being out and my kind of formulating my goals and aspirations then. So I remember the anxiety that I had. I never felt I was good enough. So I understand, and it's great to have a mentor like Vince for you. You asked me to talk about what I'm grateful about. I would say that grateful is something that is very inherent in me. I have been grateful for so many opportunities that I've been given to be where I am and to be able to have a team around me who can influence women's health. So I've had so many opportunities to do that, and I'm profoundly grateful for that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Dalton, for sharing that. We are so grateful to have you here. Vince, I'll let you take over and share something maybe you're grateful for.
Well, today I'll share that I'm grateful. I'm going to spend a few days with my mom in Italy, and all the boys and girls, the kids are coming. My wife, so family time. I've shared many different things, but that's kind of coming up. She's 87, and I wish her, many more years, and I can't wait to just, stay next to her and hold her hand. What about you, Kavita?
That's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. I think for me, every time we start this session, there's so many things to be grateful for, but I'm constantly reminded of how grateful I am for incredible leaders like yourself to spare your very gracious time to sit and chat with me and to share your message and your story with young MFMs like myself around the world. And Vince, for having AJOG MFM to give me the opportunity for this platform is something I'm extremely grateful for. So thank you. Yeah. And, Dr. Dalton, the way we start this conference, this sessions, one of our favorite go-to questions that we always love to jump right in is, starting taking it back several years ago, how did your childhood shape who you are today or your career or how you be the person you are?
I think it has shaped pretty much everything in my life, my childhood. I grew up in a small village in Ireland called Killala. And actually, as I was thinking about the meeting this morning and talking with you, I was thinking the number of people I have in my department now, in our department here, is larger than the town that I grew up in.
How big was the town?
There was 400 people in the town. My dad was the GP in the town, and he looked after all of the families. And quite honestly, for me, I saw how much he cared about everybody. And he would ask me to go to the door. Like, I'm the eldest of 7. There's 6 girls and 1 child, as we say, 1 boy. And I would go to the door, my sisters would go to the door, and my dad would quiz me about how the patients were, like how did they look? How were they feeling? Did you think they were okay? Do I need to come out emergently? Do I need to interrupt what I'm doing? And I saw what he did for them. He had Christmases with them. He got, donations for them. It wasn't just looking after their health. It was looking after their well-being, which of course is part of health, but it wasn't just the visit to a surgery. He was there for births, deaths, and everything in between. And I think that has instilled in me an enormous sense of service and a feeling that I want to give back. And I just have been able to give back on a bigger stage. So I think it has shaped everything I've done.
Wow. And before we went on, you were mentioning something about your other parent in terms of, feeling something on your shoulders. You were saying, is that where you think also your drive, because you obviously had the admiration for your dad and what he was doing. And sometimes in a smaller community, you feel that even more emotionally. But then, you kept going. And I wonder if you could describe what you were saying before about your mother.
Yeah, my dad, I watched his behavior and how he cared for people. But my mother was a very different person. We grew up in a small town, and there's 7 of us, and 5 of us are doctors, and the other 2 are lawyers. So she pushed us. And my mother was a woman before her time. She would have loved to go to medical school, but there wasn't enough resources in her family. So she pushed us to say you could do anything. But with that, I think she felt no matter how we did, we could always do more. So I sort of feel I have my Irish mother sitting on my shoulder saying, you're good, but like you could do better, So I think that has always been, I'm thinking about not just what we've accomplished, but where are we going? And I think it has given me a sense of tenacity and looking forward to do. I suppose people say when you're given a lot or when you're given opportunity, you have a duty to pay back. And, do I hit it out of the park all the time? Absolutely no. I do my best. I've tried to do my best.
Wow. No, that's wonderful. And so what inspired your journey there from Ireland, from that town that you grew up in to America?
It's kind of a long journey. I went to medical school in Galway in Ireland, and I graduated there and did my internship there. And my former husband, Joe Dalton, who I still enjoy a very good relationship with, and we had 3 great kids together. We have 3 great kids together. Always wanted the BTA degree, the Been to America degree, or Been to Canada. And we went to Canada. And at that point, I wanted to do dermatology. I was fascinated with the external manifestations of disease. But in Canada, they told me that no foreign graduate need apply, that it was the most lucrative field in Canada, and I would not get in. So the Department of Anesthesia called me and said, well, we're always looking for somebody. Would you start? And I did anesthesia for about 15 months, 18 months or so. And then I had an opportunity to switch to OBGYN. But actually, my time in anesthesia, I didn't realize how valuable it would be in my role in OB, because I love giving the epidurals on the floor, treating pain and labor. But also now, as we've seen the change in maternal mortality, having anesthesia there as our right-hand person became very, I lived it when I was doing my residency in anesthesia and switched. And I was able to develop great skills with putting central lines in. So that's how I got to being an OBGYN. And then I went to Boston because my ex wanted to go to Boston, and I got a fellowship at Tufts, and it was a serendipity is how I arrived here, basically.
Wow, the stars aligned.
You took advantage of a lot of
Yes.
different things, Mary. It's
Yeah.
a great story. And Kavita came from Thailand. I came from Italy. We share a lot, and some of our previous guests, share similar histories. One thing, as you're talking, that I wanted to ask you about is, I know you kept a very strong relationship with your family, because again, you achieve a lot, but you give up a lot. And like I was talking about my mother back in Italy, you're talking about your parents, 6 siblings. You kept in touch though. I know you go back all the time. I know at some point, when your dad was not doing well, you were
Yeah.
back and forth all the time. Maybe you can share the emotions. Like I actually teach the fact that you cannot have everything in life. You make some decisions, and whatever decision it is, I'm drinking coffee. Well, I'm not drinking orange juice. It's if you decide something, it's you give up on something else. Can you tell your story regarding being an Irish girl in the U.S. for so long now?
I think my parents gave us such a strong sense of family and how we were always so welcome. Like I went to boarding school when I was 11. And then I went to medical school when I was 16 because, living in a small village, there wasn't the options for education. And all of my sisters went, my brother went to boarding school. So when there were 4 of us at the boarding school at the same time with my sisters. And, my sisters are my friends. And even though I'm here, I keep as close a contact as I possibly can. And, Saturday morning, my sisters joke with me that I do the rounds. I call every one of them and see how they're doing. And then, now with WhatsApp, we have the WhatsApp family, and that's really lent itself to enormous ability to connect on a daily basis. So I'm understand what's going on with them and their families. So I think it was that strong sense of family and community. Like to give you an example, our phone number was Kalala 14. So I would have to call, and then I'd talk to the operator in the post office at the town. So that's the environment I grew up in, that there was an amazing connection with family, and the people in the town were like family. They're like family to me when I go back now and say, "Oh, Mary's back in town." And so even after all those years, I feel I've done my best. And you mentioned, and I hope I'm not digressing too much, but you mentioned something else, Vince. I don't know if you know, but I've had a fellowship with Ireland. I've been very fortunate to have Fergal Malone. I worked with him. He was a resident and a fellow and a faculty with me. And some of my other faculty would say Fergal is like your other son. And when he went back to Ireland, he said, "Mayor, we have to continue working together." So we started a fellowship between the Royal College of Surgeons and Columbia. And we've trained probably 12 fellows now, and they are all in major positions of leadership in Ireland. So I feel very, very proud of the fact that through my connection with Fergal and Fergal having trained here and our ability and closeness in working together, that we've been able to have Irish fellows here for the last 12 years or so. And I have another one coming. I think she actually arrived yesterday or today. And it's approved by the Royal College in the UK. And so that's been a joy to have that relationship as well.
Fantastic.
That is so beautiful. I think it just shows that there is no limit to the service or the amount of impact you can continue to give. And it feels like such a full circle moment to be able to continue to create this ripple effect back at your hometown as well. I think that is so, because Vince, you do something, it's similar with Italian. I know a lot of people come do research and, train with you. And this inspires me too, as someone from a different country wanting to continue to give back, down the road. Hopefully we'll be able to set up something like this for Thailand. I think that's so wonderful and inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing that story.
Yeah, look for those opportunities. And sometimes it happens just by chance, but, you need to be paying attention to find those opportunities and create the relationships, what I would recommend to you, Kavita, but I'm sure you're going to do great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I had a question. You shared that when growing up, you watched your dad take care of patients and you shadowed him. How has that translated into how you are as a physician or how you take care of patients? Do you think it's kind of similar, or have you picked up something and added your own approach to it?
I think there's one thing that always sticks with me is when I would go answer the door, he would quiz me when I come back in and say, what was she wearing? What was he wearing? Did he look happy? Did he look sad? Did he look like, he was upset? Did he, what did you think about them? Did they have a scarf? Were they wearing gloves? Did they look cold? And I was like, I didn't notice. But then I would go and look intently at the person. So I'd be able to come in and say, a brown scarf, she was wearing a long coat, she had, shoes that were not matching, and, these kinds of things. So I would notice things. And I didn't realize until much later, actually, I think is when I came to Columbia, I didn't realize until I was thinking back that it really gave me that power of clinical observation, that I was learning how to observe people. And one thing that I think it has translated into is my work in mental health. And I would notice with my own patients, I see patients on a Wednesday, and I would see them and I'd say, are you okay? And then the tears would come and they would say, how did you know? And I said, well, I see you every week or I see you every 2 weeks and you look different today. And I think that probably came from that. And I, used to refer to psychiatry, and at least in New York, access to psychiatry is very challenging. It's expensive. It's not covered by many insurances. And some of the cost is up to $1,200 an hour for patients to be seen by a psychiatrist. And I remember, and then my patients would say, oh, we'd much prefer and come and see you, Mary. And I was thinking, I'm going to miss something. I'm not qualified to provide the kind of care that they need. So I worked very hard for a long time. I think I'm tenacious. I worked very hard to create a mental health division in our department. And it was very fortunate. The timing of this was perfect, 2019. Although I'd worked on it for 15 years, we were able to create a mental health, women's mental health at Columbia Department of OBGYN. And we have 14 mental health providers.
Wow.
And it's led by a phenomenal person, Catherine Monk, who's a PhD, very was funded before all of this happened and hopefully will be. But, that vision of trying to create something like that was always important to me. So it was realized by kind of a combination of finding the right leader. And we also were able to get philanthropic support for it, which has been really important in how I've been able to do things here in New York.
That is great. That is great. As you're talking, I'm thinking another topic it'd be good for our young audience to listen to is mentorship. What mentors helped you and how did you best interact with them? What suggestions you would have for a young person, in terms of what mentor to choose. And how you see mentorship now. I think, we all owe it to the people we admired, your dad to begin with, but I'm sure you had other people, even unknown people in small roles that they give you a chance, along the way.
I've had so many who've helped.
Yeah, I know.
Like you, Vince, so many of my colleagues, Hankins, Gilstrap, people at SMFM, Peter Van Dorsten, they used to call us the quads. We used to hang out together all the time. And,
really?
Peter and Larry and Gary, they were so, they looked out for me when, in those days, Kavita, there wasn't as many women, and the three of them really looked out for me, and we are dear friends, Norman Gant, like so many people. But so they were very important to me in terms of national involvement and involvement SMFM, Tom Garidi, you, Vince, so many people there, Valerie Parisi, wonderful, wonderful colleagues, John Queenan, Ted Quilligan, wonderful, wonderful people. But in my career, something that was a real tipping point for me, other than, the anesthesia that I mentioned to you, was John Robbins. And essentially I worked, ultrasound was in its infancy, and I wanted to go work with John, and I tried to work with John, and he said, I'm full. I don't take anyone. And then I went to him again. He was speaking in Boston. I said, remember me? I called you. He said, no. And I said, I'm sure you get so many calls. Of course he did. Everyone wanted to work with him. And I said, I really would like to work with you. He said, I can't pay you. I said, you don't need to pay me. He said, oh, you really want to do this? And I said, yes. So I worked as a sonographer for 6 months. And
at Yale? When is this?
Yeah. That was 1984, and Josh was there, and Roberto was there,
everybody was there.
Was there, and Philippe Janty was there, and they were amazing years. So I worked as John's sonographer, and I just wanted to be like John. Like John had such vision and imagination. Like he saw how ultrasound, really. It wasn't just about the image. It was how you work it into the practice of maternal fetal medicine. It was the environment he created. He had amazing collaborative ability. He worked with genetics at the time. He worked with pediatric neurology, neonatology. So he was ahead of his time in terms of collaborative centers. And I was like a sponge in his unit. And, the other thing was about John is I wasn't very good in ultrasound then. Like in the beginning, I was horrible. And John never made me feel bad. And I remember once I didn't know what was going on, and there was conjoined twins. And I said, John, I can't see a membrane. And he said, well, you did good. You didn't see a membrane. But it was conjoined twins. You put the probe down and diagnosed it immediately. But he never made me feel bad. And how he was with patients, I take with me to this day. So I learned a ton from John in terms of collaboration, how he was with patients, how he was as a trainee, that no matter what he didn't make you feel bad. And I think that's a very important attribute.
Wow, that is so beautiful. As you're sharing this, I can almost feel like your excitement and your passion of like when you were probably a young, trainee back then, like it still shines through. It shows so much how much that moment really meant for you and how it really shaped, who you are. That and like I'm getting excited hearing about it.
I was Josh's sonographer. I would take Josh through his amniocentesis. So we've been friends since then. So he's always been so supportive. So we've. And Roberto and Richard, my husband, Richard Berkowitz, Roberto and Richard are very close. And so those were bonds. Al Reese, those were great bonds that we made then.
And let me chime in, Kavita, then you continue. I think, since I've known Mary for a long time, that really defines a lot of what Mary is about. And I think maybe the one important message from today is that you, Mary, have been able to find major bonds, but not only professionally. You publish a lot of papers and whatever with all these great, giants in MFM, but you're truly friends with them, and I know it because I've seen it. You keep in touch. You see each other at the conference at SMFM all the time, and it's the importance of personal connections. Above other things. Administrative work or. Again, giving a lecture, but that's really been very, very impressive. Sorry, Kavita, to chime in.
No, I think that's beautiful. And when you are sharing this, it almost takes me back to when you were sharing the story about your childhood, like growing up in a community of 400 people. It seems like since you were young, like deep, meaningful connections are so important because it's a small community. Sounds like everyone has those deep, meaningful connections, and you've just continued to foster that. One thing you mentioned, Dr. Dalton, that really I wanted to touch on is you mentioned that you were one of the few women back in the day. And I think that's something that's so inspirational and powerful. Can you share a little bit of like your experience of as a woman back then? And I think a lot of people who are in more minority roles in today might relate to how do you thrive, as being the minority in that kind of environment.
I had such help and mentorship along the way. I never felt I was treated any differently. I mentioned, John, I mentioned, my former jobs. I was in Ottawa, Canada. I was at Tufts. Larry Gilstrap and Gary Hankins and Peter looked out for me. So there wasn't as many role models with women then. So, the Norman Gant, they saw things that I wanted to do things well, and they helped me along the way. So I didn't feel that I was left behind because of that. But I think it's also, you have to, be there and do the right thing and show that you're going to have follow through as much as you can. And if somebody believes in you, you really don't want to disappoint them. So I suppose that's my Irish mother sitting on my shoulder all the time. But, I'm very grateful for those relationships that helped me along the way.
Were you one of the first SMFM women president? I'm trying to look back at there weren't too many before you.
No.
Maybe Valerie?
Valerie was before me. Yeah. And Valerie and I would see each other all the time. And sometimes she'd look at me and say, isn't there anyone else? And of course, now there's so many of you, Kavita, and that's wonderful to see.
You really have changed the world. I think we should stay on this subject. It's because again, you were talking about your mentors, but you've been a mentee to, I don't want to exaggerate, but to thousands, even just by being, one of the first ever leaders in MFM, who is a woman, that must make you very, very proud. And I'm sure you have stories on that. Like, if John Robbins was having too many people, knocking on his door, I can only imagine what your door was like, now, but, for the last 3 decades, really.
Well, honestly, Vince, I'm fortunate now in that I have so many people in the department who are phenomenal, that they're not just knocking at my door, they're knocking at so many doors in our department. And what am I grateful for? Sometimes I say I have two families. I have my own family, my kids, my husband, but I also have my Columbia, New York Presbyterian family, and they're like my family. And I have extraordinary division chiefs and vice chairs who are leaders, could be chairs in many other places, but many have chosen to stay here. And I am enormously grateful for that. I'll never stop being grateful for the team that I have. So it's not just my door. There's many doors to knock on here with the people that I work with.
Wow. And how did that journey kind of happen for you, Dr. Alden? Like from, finishing your fellowship and everything, did you always know you wanted to be in the leadership role at some point, or did those opportunities just kind of, obviously, it seems like the opportunities just came your way because you showed that capability, but how did that kind of transpire for you?
I had no goal to be in leadership, none. My only goal was to do things well. And when I'm asked with others looking for advice about what to do and the 5-year plan, and I said, throw out the 5-year plan. That's at least my experience. Do what you do really well every day. And if you do things well, opportunities will come to you. And then you have to decide, are you going to take those opportunities or not? And I think there is so much work to be done in our field that people are always looking for good people who are going to put the energy and the effort in and go the extra mile when they can. And I think then I was started to be offered opportunities, and I took some of them along the way. I basically had 3 jobs, one in Ottawa, one in Boston, and now one here at Columbia. So the other advice I got from Norman Gant is don't move unless you have to. And that's always stuck with me, that, if you really can do everything you want in a place, why would you want to leave? You continue to work and make that better. And I was offered a great opportunity by Roger Lobo to come to Columbia. And I remember saying to Lynn Simpson and Fergal, who came with me at the time, if we go there, there's so much to be done, we'll never finish. And that's kind of where we're at. And Lynn is still here, and Fergal is in Ireland, and we're still working together. So, our field, like New York, the population is so vast.
Right.
We've built more along the way that we're never really done. So that's been wonderful for me, to work with people I've worked with for years and to see them blossom and see their careers mushroom and see what they can do. And they're much smarter than me.
Well, they learn from the best. So no, thanks so much for sharing that. When you look back at your career, you've worn so many hats, Is there one that is your favorite one? And if so, why?
Good question.
I can't say I have a favorite because I'm always thinking about what's tomorrow. What am I doing today? What can I do better? And tomorrow, like once I can do something, then I kind of forget about it and say, what do I need to do next? I will say there's one thing, though, that has helped me a lot here in New York, and I mentioned it, and it's philanthropy. And I didn't like to ever ask for money. I never asked for resources when I was in Boston. And when I came to New York Presbyterian and Columbia, New York Presbyterian put me in touch with somebody who was very interested in women's health, Carmen Thane, and her husband, John. And we created an advisory council. And I remember Carmen saying to me, Mary, we need to start raising money. And I was saying, Carmen, I'm not good at that. I'm used to giving help. I'm not used to asking for it. And she folded her arms and she looked at me and she said, Mary, get over it. It's your job. And it became my job. And I've been very fortunate that we've raised a number of chairs here. It's very hard to get tenure as a clinician at Columbia. So we have, I think, 18 or 19 endowed chairs in our department because of the wonderful donors who have been great patients of ours. And we've built centers, and Carmen and John have been incredibly supportive in many of our success. And so we have a whole advisory team on the Columbia side that has allowed us to do things that we could not do without their help. So I mentioned the mental health program. That would not have happened without philanthropy. Roy and Diana Vagelos have been incredibly helpful in so many things. So that has been great. And then Vince, you'll probably remember they asked me to run the foundation, and we needed the foundation for SMFM. And the endowment at that time was just like $3 million. And it had been $2 million when it had been started like 30 years ago. So I said, this is not a recipe for success. So I started to ask for money from the members of the society, and Vince will remember people would run from me when they'd see me going down the corridor. Because
Mary, I remember you said at the first meeting, I think, we want to get to 8 million. And I was like,
get to 8 million.
Mary, she's crazy. Like, we have barely 3 million, how is she going to get to 8 million in, so quickly, whatever. And of course, Vast exceeded the 8 millions, and it was unbelievable to watch. Unbelievable, because Kavita, she's doing that for Columbia full time, and now she's doing for SMF. So it's multiple but she empowered so many people, such a big team, and
Amazing.
good at it. You obviously do it well.
But Vince, I think it was from that conversation, get over it. And
Yeah.
I owe that to Carmen. And that's when I started doing it. And, I think in general, you have to be careful. I would never ask a patient who's an existing patient. But if they have a good experience, some people want to give back. And, been very fortunate to meet people who want to give back.
Wow.
I think another thing that has been impressive of you, Mary, is how many people you have, how much talent you have, quote unquote, discovered and then sent into the world. We're talking about your division chairs, but there are many division directors, chairmen, around the country, and just regular wonderful MFMs that you have trained that have somehow crossed your path. I guess the question is, what's talent for you? Like, who are the people along the way and even now who you have recruited, from different places, people to come to Colombia and train. And I'm like, how did she know that this person was going to be so great? How did she know when she was a fellow or a resident, but you did. Can you share some of those tricks? I don't know, secrets?
I can't
really sixth sense.
Say what it is. I mean, what I've always tried to do is identify gaps in our field and fill them. And you don't want to, recruit a clone of yourself. You want to recruit people who have different talent and is going to broaden what we can offer to women. And sometimes it takes a long time to recruit somebody. You start and, you put the idea in their mind and they think about it. And sometimes it takes a very short time to do that. And, now I have, like, an example is Uma Reddy. Uma is, wonderful vice chair of research, but, she had a connection because she worked with Ron Wapner as a fellow years ago. Uma.
She was our fellow here at Jefferson, yeah.
So when we had that position open, although Uma was at Yale, she didn't like the clinical as well. She just liked to do the research. And we were fortunate that we were able to do that. So again, Catherine Monk, I met her 15 years ago. It took her 15 years to say yes to me. Then Arnie Avincula, I know we needed to build a minimally invasive surgery. And I met Arnie and I said, we need to get you here. And, I showed him what we had done in OB. And I think within a day, he had said he was going to come. So sometimes it happens very quickly. Same with Zev Williams, who's our division director for reproductive endocrinology. And Zev has built a powerhouse in IVF in 7 years. So I could see the vision that Zev had, and just by him talking to me. So I suppose some of it is intuition, some of it is, their track record. Some of it is, will you be able to support them? Like, you want to recruit great people, but then you have to resource them to be successful. And I've tried to do that. Can you do everything? No, you can't, but I've done my best with it.
Wow.
And some must be also that you've had so many successes that people, look up to you. Obviously, New York is a big place. You're a huge name. Colombia. It's nice to see, that there are opportunities like that, and you've been able to grow so many careers, really empowering people to follow their dreams.
Yeah. No, it's so beautiful. And if I may, pivot on this a little bit, you've had such a massively successful career. And how were you able to raise 3 children and have a family all while doing this? I think it's a common question a lot of women have, So can you share a little bit on that, please?
Honestly, I would say with difficulty. Number 2, I had great help. I had a wonderful Irish nanny, Val, who most people who work with me know her. She, she's like a sister to me and a mother to my kids. And she's still part of our family. She's part of, I remember her recently saying to me, "Tell Richard I'm part of every package." So she is, she's part of our family. So she really helped me along the way. And, I was fortunate I had great kids that were healthy, and I didn't have to deal with, like some colleagues have had really significant illnesses with their family. That changes things. I have been fortunate that I haven't had that. My kids I had kids when I was young, very, much. So I was 22 when I had my eldest. And so I kind of didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. And it just I figured it out along the way. I remember one of the first woman chair at Columbia in anesthesia said to me, Margaret Wood, great woman, she said, "Mary, as a woman, you can have a career, a family, and a social life, but you can't have all three at the same time." So I chose a career and a family. I didn't really have much of a social life. So it was, I worked and I had a family.
But it looks like that is what gave you meaning in life, and it sounds like you never really had to sort out the third as much. And so, but what do you like to do for fun? Is there something you do for yourself outside of work that's a hobby or something you enjoy socially?
I love design. If I had another life, I'd love to be in design.
Wow.
And, I've really enjoyed, redecoration, renovation, that sort of thing. I'm a collector. I love mid-century furniture, and I collect Irish art. And I feel if I'm going to focus, I may as well focus with Ireland. And, I collect Irish modern art. So that's been fun for me. And my kids always say to me when I go visit their houses, "Oh, stop looking, Mom. You're going to figure out what we need to change." And, I love what architecture does to health. And actually, Carmen Thane showed me that too, because the sense of space when somebody is anxious, having a great delivery room, a great ultrasound room, really helps with reducing anxiety. And Carmen had a big background in design, and she shared a lot of that with me. So I learned a lot. Carmen really became a mentor, a personal mentor to me in terms of how space influences how people feel. And I've tried to put effort into, new buildings here where there's going to be opportunities to do the right things for women's health, have input into that. And, fortunately, we've been able to have some beautiful new buildings and new floors here that I've been able to have input into. So that sense of design, I've tried to carry it into work as well.
That's so beautiful.
Do you have, sorry, Kavita, do you have a room or a house or a space that it's your favorite retreat, maybe, where you can unwind or anything like that?
I grew up on the ocean, and during COVID, we renovated a house in Newport, and it belonged to Edith Wharton, the wonderful American novelist. And so I really enjoy that, and create a library for Richard. And, I create this big solarium that I go in there and look on the outside, and I feel away from it all. And it's not on the ocean, but it's very close to the ocean. So the ocean for me gives me an enormous sense of peace. So when I walk down and think about things, my husband, Richard, says, "What do you think about?" I say, "I don't think about anything." It's almost like a meditation when I walk along. And sometimes, a problem solution will come into my brain, but frequently nothing is in my brain as I walk along the the water there in Newport. So that's been a wonderful source of joy for me to have that.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, no, that is so beautiful. It sounds, it's just, you just go into the present moment. I love that. And I was thinking about, when you think about your everyday, day-to-day work at work, what brings you the most joy at work every day?
I would say the work that has been very important to me, and Vince knows this, is the work that I've done in maternal mortality and maternal mortality reduction. And again, I came into it through serendipity. I was having dinner at one of our SMFM meetings with John Queenan and with who else was there? Alfred Abu Hamid, and also Dan O'Keefe. And, we were talking about what we see changing in our clinical services. And I said, I'm really seeing so many more sick mothers. And Alfred said the same thing, and Dan was hearing the same thing. And John said, I don't think we're prepared to do that. We're doing so much ultrasound and genetics and that kind of thing. And John Queenan said, you should write about it, Mary. And I'm, the editor of the Green Journal. Sorry, Vincenzo, who's at the opposite.
No, Green is great.
And as you know, my colleague, Jason Wright, leads the Green Journal now, chief of GYN Oncology, division chief, amazing person. John said, write about it. And I said, look, how can I write about it? I don't know anything about it, but it stimulated me to write that article, Where's EM and MFM? And then that started that whole thing of putting the M back into MFM with collaboration from ABOG and SMFM and the CDC and, the NIH. And we wrote some articles over the years. And I think I got one of the biggest compliments from Bill Grobman recently. It was just after the boards when he said, Mary, putting the M back didn't mean taking the F out. And I think that what I hear from Lynn Simpson and Russ Miller, who work with me, that they're having trouble recruiting people into the fetal procedures now. And there's really a dearth of individuals across the country who are subspecializing in fetal procedures that are MFMs or pediatric surgeons and that sort of thing. But certainly that was not my intent. But I think that what I've seen happen in with the presentations at SMFM has been wonderful. And then I've been working here in New York as well with that, which is very, very satisfying. I work with Peter Bernstein and ACOG and most of the hospitals here in New York. So that's been, I would say, a passion project for me.
Wow.
Amazing. As we get towards the end, we've talked a lot about proud moments. I wonder if there's anything else you wanted to show that, and to share that you're proud of. I mean, but we already talked about so many things, but maybe we haven't touched on some of the things you wanted to say or wanted to share. Certainly you have collaborated so well. One of the things that it's impressive about this hour is how many names you have mentioned, Mary.
Yeah.
Certainly the most than anybody has so far in this series, which tells me again and confirms that we do best when we work in teams rather than by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. I mean, that's been something I think that I've learned, that I've tried to do all along. And you don't accomplish much as an individual. And when you're a member of the team, you have to be a present member of that team and support the team. And do the best you can. There's always obstacles along the way, and you have to overcome those as much as you can. And with a great team, you can do that. And I'm incredibly grateful. I think I mentioned this to everybody in my department, like the faculty, the trainees, the students, the residents, the fellows. my administrative staff. I would be done without my administrator, Michelle DeVito, who Vincenzo.
She's unbelievable.
She's so
good.
She's my right arm. And then I have another person, Hope Yates, who is a lawyer, and she is an MPH, and she does communications in the department. I mean, she does so many things to improve women's health. And like, I feel I have people who will, most of the time, tell me what I don't want to hear, so I think that's important. But every single person matters. And, people ask me, like, what is success? I mean, success means different things to different people. And I'm equally proud of hearing about a doctor in our community who's made a patient's day for them and looked after a family, as I am about getting one of our other faculty getting an NIH grant, because it takes every single one of those things to be successful. Like, if you don't have people seeing patients and working with our community where we live, you can't really run a department. You can't recruit people for research. So you're strong as your weakest link. So we have to always be thinking about the culture and paying attention to the team we have and being grateful for it. And I probably don't do it enough, but when I look back, it's the people. It's all the people. The four walls may vary. It's wonderful to have good spaces, but it's all the people.
Wow.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, that is just so perfect. And, you mentioned something there that I want to elaborate on a little bit more, that, you said even if you're a small, community practice in community medicine, or you're out here, because I think a lot of young MFMs, like a common conversation that comes up, especially around new graduates, is private practice versus academic medicine. And a lot of people feel so scared to own up that they want to be in private practice and want to be out in the community because they feel like they're not succeeding if they do that. And I love that, as someone, with all your accomplishments and everything you've done, sitting here sharing that, no, that does not matter. And I think that's a message that a lot of young doctors really need to hear. So you can elaborate on that a little bit. I think that would be beautiful.
I mean, choose your path and follow that. And some of my former fellows have done private practice. Josh Weiss is one of them in Dallas. And Josh was like a sponge when he was here. And then he went to Dallas and started a private practice. And he recently told me he sold it. And I was like, oh my God, Josh, after all this time, you're like this amazing, successful entrepreneurial person now. But he learned as much as he could and went and created a successful practice in Dallas. I'm very proud of that. He sent me the most beautiful note. And my advice is just do things well and, give back, help people. And you get so much more fulfillment out of helping people. I get a lot more fulfillment out of giving than getting. So if you give, you're going to get a lot back, is the way I look at it.
So true. Be a giver, not a taker.
Yeah.
One last question for me would be any current, personal or professional goals. Again, we went over so many endeavors, all along. Do you have something now that you're looking forward to that you want to share?
Well, personal, people say, like, when are you going to slow down, Mare? I'm kind of not somebody who slows down a lot. So, I'm not thinking of that right now, but one of these days I will.
And you should do what you like, like you said before. So
I love what I do. And certainly I start thinking about it when you've been as in a position as long as I have. And one thing that is coming that we all need to be thinking about is AI. And I have a young MFM faculty who's now going to be the lead for women's AI at the hospital. So we started thinking about that last year. And, our colleagues in reproductive endocrinology published on, AI in identifying sperm and azoospermic men recently. It was all over Time magazine and whatever. So I think the opportunities in imaging and whatever that AI will introduce is going to change the field. And I think that's an enormous opportunity for further work. I think reproductive aging is, no one wants to get old. So reproductive aging is a field that we've been investing in here, and have a wonderful person who we recruited some years ago who's very well funded in reproductive aging and what that might mean for women as they age. So those are things I think about. Certainly things will change very dramatically with the passing of the bill, and what's going to happen with Medicaid and our obligation to our community. Like when you think about the number of Medicaid deliveries we have I think it's 3,000 or 4,000 Medicaid deliveries here. We have a number of insured patients as well, of course, but what will that mean, and how can we use models that are going to be less expensive but keep the quality where it needs to be? So we're introducing a lot more midwives into our hospitals, and they're just in a very short time at one of our hospitals, they're doing 55% of the vaginal deliveries. So those are the models I'm thinking about. We are going to have to do more with less. Healthcare is changing, and at least those of us in academic medicine who have a broad perspective, I suppose everyone will have to think about it differently. But keeping the cost in mind and what we can do and how we can do things more efficiently is top of mind for me.
Wow. Those are such important points. I love that you kind of close with that, because that also leaves the listeners to think about what we as younger generations, what we can invest in and focus on to help continue to build and expand, the MFM community and take great care of our patients. And I love to end with this one fun question before we close out. If you could describe yourself in one word, Dr. Dalton, what would that be?
I would say I'm tenacious.
I love that.
I'm tenacious. I don't give up easily. And yeah, that's how I would describe myself.
That's beautiful. And that your life story definitely reflects that, and for all that you've done till today. And do you have any closing words you'd like to share with our audience before I wrap up?
I just have this profound sense of gratitude. I have enormous gratitude for allowing me to be on the program today with you. Kavita, I look forward to your career. Vince, you know what I think of you. You're just amazing. I don't know how you write as much as you do. And you never sleep. You're like Jason Wright. You and he never sleep. But I'm just so grateful for all of the opportunities I've been given. I'm grateful for my family that have been there for every day, good and bad. My husband, my family, my team, the department, the hospital and the medical school, the donors who have believed in me, and given me an opportunity that I've tried to do my best with. So thank you for allowing me to be with you here today.
Thank you. This has been so inspirational, so extraordinary, Mary. I always admired you. This hour piled on another 10,000 points to the millions before. And I hope everybody gets to see how humble, tenacious, inspired, mentor, mentee, and what a wonderful, it's really a calling, you have had in your career, and a wonderful example for others. So again, Kavita, thanks for organizing this. Once again, thanks for Mary for being on, and thanks to the many of you, the thousands of you who listen in. Again, it's been a wonderful, wonderful hour. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.